So obviously you need some help. It's a difficult process to go through to make a subjective decision about someone. So these professional bodies and trade bodies have all got registers of competence. So what they've done for you is, if you like, they've produced a technical reference for the individual, for the risk assessor. We've got the Fire Industry Association. The Fire Industry Association have got a big list, something like 76 companies that offer fire risk assessment services on there. And it says at the top, it says, these companies offer fire risk assessment services, and in order to protect the responsible person, they've signed up to a code of practice. So they've signed up to a code of practice. So they've paid the money to the FIA and they've signed up to a code of practice, and that's it. No one's gone in and assessed their competence. There's no third-party assessment at all of their competence of the people they use. They basically just said, we're good guys, we are competent, don't worry about it. You can pick us with trust. That's first-party certification, poor first party. We've got the IFSM, Institute of Fire Safety Managers. Basically, they get a CV, and we know how reliable CVs are, don't we? They get your CV, and they look, on paper, this guy looks great. And then what they do is they phone up people you've worked for and say, tell us about this guy, is he all right? So you get a personal reference from a previous customer. Now, that is flawed because a responsible person who doesn't know about fire safety and fire risk assessment has consciously said, well, I don't know anything about that, so what I'll do is go and get someone in to do that, a professional to come in. If they're not competent to do the risk assessment, are they competent then to evaluate the technical content within that report? No, absolutely not. So a personal reference, he was a nice guy, he turned up on time, his prices were cheap, his report was lovely, that thick, beautifully bound. Doesn't mean a thing. It's the technical content in there that you need to be assessed. IFPO, the Institute of Fire Prevention, John Smith was in there. You cannot search their register. You can't get there. As a responsible person, you can't find it. It's not on the website. It's not available for you. And it's also got limitations in the scope. So the guy you employ on IFPO might only be able to do corner shops. Yeah, and you want him for a high-rise. So you can't even search that one. The IFE register, 116. There's about 116 risk assessors on there. That, to be fair, is quite comprehensive. It goes into quite a lot of detail. You can bypass the system quite easily by going on one of their approved courses, a 5-day course, and that reduces the amount of information you need to provide for them. They are tightening that up. They are changing slightly. I should go back to the IFSM. They've said that their register was for their members. It was a kind of an interim measure till something better came along. They've said to all their members that they should go for an accredited scheme within the next 2 years, which ours is the only accredited scheme at the moment. Well, we're not too pleased about that. We'd rather there's more than one accredited scheme. So our scheme in the middle there is the only UCAS accredited scheme in the country for competent fire risk assessors. We're the only one that's gone through the effort and the rigmarole to get there, and it's very, very different than the others. We don't rely on CV. We don't assess the input. Now, the input is the training, the experience, the qualifications. We don't do that. What we do is we assess the output, the practicalities of what they do. Can they do the job that they say they can do? So that's a real different shift. All those, the outside ones, are for the profession, by the profession. Ours is independent for the end user. So that's the difference between them. It's a very different approach, a very different angle in. Yeah? You look after your members normally, and that's one of the criticisms of some of these. So this is what I did. I followed the government's advice, and I looked in the Yellow Pages for Northwest fire risk assessors. Fire risk assessors in the Northwest. So this is how the government suggests you select a competent person. On the left, there's 36 that had a direct link to their website from Yell. So I went on Google, Fire Risk Assessor Northwest, Yell came up, went on Yell, and I followed it all the way through. All 36 of them were selling exactly the same thing. They were all selling fear and compliance. Fear of not having a risk assessment, fear of having a fire. What happens when you've got a fire? You never recover from a fire, do you? Your business will never recover from a fire. And compliance, you've got to have a risk assessment. Oh, if you don't have a risk assessment, you could be fined heavily. Look at these examples. Some even put examples on, like some of the examples I showed today, £20,000, £30,000. They're all selling the same thing. Only 12 of them mention anything about experience, and I mean anything. It might have been just, you know, been in profession 5 years or 10 years or 20. I put that down as saying about your experience, or most of them were fire service. Qualifications, only 10 mention anything about qualifications. So even if you wanted to delve into it, there's a good chance, you know, you wouldn't find those details. Only 5 mention anything about their insurance, in case it did all go wrong, the professional indemnity insurance. Only 3 were on any register of competence, and we've already established that those registers vary wildly, yeah, from their robustness. Only 3. So you're looking at 90%, and this is actually true, 90% plus of risk assessors in this country are on no register of competence at all. Not great odds if you're trying to select a fire risk assessor. And none of them said they were working to a code of conduct, a professional code, a professional and ethical code of conduct. So you can't even, you know, pull them up on that. So it's not a healthy picture if you're trying to select a risk assessor. It's a difficult job.